शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये दक्षिणामूर्तिसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गणपति बप्पा जय श्रीराम। Okay, first of all, happy Friendship Day to all of you all. Especially happy Friendship Day to you too. So friendship, of course, is a very unique relationship. It's in my view, okay, friendship is something that really is a life force. It sustains a lot of relationships. It's not just between two unknown people, but in my belief, what actually sustains all relationship is the friendship within that. So we might have experienced this, even amongst, if you have say 7-8 cousin brothers, there are a couple of them who have certain affinity, like for example Rama and Lakshmana have that affinity and Bharata and Shatrughna have a different affinity, right? So what is it that causes that affinity? It's basically the friendship between the two. It's a friendship in that relationship of brothers which causes that affinity. Sometimes a mother, if they have say 6-7 children, a mother generally sometimes gets inclined to a particular son or a particular daughter. It is a friendship in their relationship which is blossoming. Even between husband and wife, only when the friendship between the relationship really kind of blossoms, the relationship goes well. So I think in that spirit, friendship is probably a very life force. It sustains a lot of relationships, and specifically when it comes to friends of same age, I think the biggest benefit is that it keeps us young, right? It keeps the child within us alive. Specifically, people of my age and maybe elder to me who would want to get associated with younger people, but then we get pushed away, right? For us, surely friends of our age keeps the child alive within us and keeps us young, healthy. So I think in that spirit, happy Friendship Day to all of y'all. All of y'all are friends. We all are friends here. So in that spirit, it's a great day to celebrate. Coming to the topic, so a few years back, okay, and this has relevance to today's session. A few years back when I was listening to one of the pravachan is, what do you mean by pravachan? Pravachan means, vachan means to speak. Pravachan means something good to speak, okay, that is what it basically means. So when I was listening to one of the pravachans and he happened to narrate a story, apparently somebody known to him asked him as to what is the benefit of listening to a pravachan or a vyakhyan or an upanyas. Upanyas, these are basically different names to the same activity of telling stories. So he had told, okay, and I'm just kind of putting my words to what he had told. And the question was as compared to reading. So when we read books, so Ramayana is something that is available, right? One can always read books and understand exactly what we are telling, right? What the story that I'm narrating now. But what is it that differentiates between a pravachan when you have a live session and somebody actually tells you a story and you listen, vis-a-vis when you read a story? What is actually the difference? So he had narrated certain things which I'll try and kind of summarize and kind of narrate now. So what actually happens is in a storytelling session, when you are doing it personally, the emotions and the background moral of the story gets placed, right? Vis-a-vis when you are reading, it's just a plain reading. And what happens in a plain reading, it is the reader of the emotions of the reader which gets superimposed into it. So if I am in a foul mood, then I am not really grasping it in that manner, right? But when you are listening to somebody, the emotions of the person who is sitting and narrating the story, in the spirit in which the story needs to be narrated, gets transported. And that is important. Why it is important? Every scripture, every book, why scripture? Every book, every poem, every prose, every essay that we end up reading, every bit of knowledge that we end up reading or listening, there are different meanings to it and they are layered like an onion, okay? So there will be a lot of different meanings. So what are the different meanings? So it is called an artha. Artha means meaning. Okay, that is what it means, right? So the first is Shabdartha, which means the meaning of the word per se, right? So whatever is written, there is a particular meaning that is attached to that word. It itself has a meaning and it conveys the meaning that it's supposed to be conveying. So that's called as a Shabdartha. Then there is something called as a Bhavartha. Bhavartha means the emotions with which it was written. So a person who is writing a particular book or a poem or an essay has a particular emotion attached to it. That emotion needs to be captured in the spirit in which it was written, and that is important. It is not in my emotions, it is the emotions of the person who is writing it that needs to be captured, right? So for example, I generally give this as an example to my office team, okay, when they write mails. Today everything gets written mails, right? Mails are written to people, and sometimes being professionals, you end up writing mails to far senior people, okay? And a very commonly used word is please, okay? We might think that we are writing the word please with a request, okay? So for example, please send this, okay? Now, the person, when I am saying with an emotion called please send this. When the person who is reading, he is reading it as please send this, becomes an order, right? So what was a request for a person who sent it becomes an order for a person who is reading it, right? Now that happens because there is no voice modulation. Voice modulation can happen only when you actually sit and explain. When you read a book, you are not going to have that voice modulation. That please, which was a request, becomes an order. And this is the change in emotion. This is Bhavartha, okay? So if a scripture has a particular emotion, a storyteller or a pravachankar or a vyakhyankar is supposed to get that essence of that emotion out in the story, and that is important. Sukshmartha. Now Sukshmartha is basically the subtle thing, the reading between the lines, okay? So imagine an husband and wife, okay, talking to each other, and the husband says, well, today morning, Sunday morning, I'll make the breakfast and the coffee, and the wife says, I'm okay, right? Tone, same, I'm okay. In the evening, the husband says, I've got a few friends, so I'm going to go out with them and kind of chill and come back, I have a couple of beers and then come back. The wife says, I'm okay, okay? The tone is same as it was in the morning, the tone is same. But a smart husband will understand that the second oh I'm okay is not the same as the first I am okay. Okay, there is a lot of thing to read between the lines. That's a Sukshmartha. A person, an husband who is smart will understand the second I am okay is actually not okay. She is not okay with it, and he's probably supposed to get some gift while coming back or whatever to ensure that her anger is taken care of. So understanding the subtlety in the sentence. Okay, something called as a Tattvartha, which means this is the philosophical meaning, okay, the metaphorical meaning. And this is something, unless and until an experienced pravachankar or an experienced upanyaskar actually talks, only then it can really be understood, right? The actual philosophy behind the particular story being narrated. So there's something called as an Adhyatma Ramayana, okay, which actually takes Ramayana to the next level of actually giving what Sita actually represents, Jivatma, Rama is Paramatma, and how their union is important, how Jivatma is actually yearning when she is there in Ravana's captivity, how she is yearning for reunion with the Paramatma. So this is a very typical Tattvartha, the philosophical meaning behind a particular scripture. And this is important, okay, this is important to be understood as well. And that again will come back only from when you actually speak about it. Just plain reading is something you will never understand it. Something called as a prasangik artha, which means reference to a context, okay? And the context has to be understood. The context in which it was written, the context in which the particular story occurred has to be understood in that specific context. So today, we do find a lot of politicians saying, oh well, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that, my words were plucked out of the context and presented. And we do see what happens, when something is plucked out of the context and presented separately, without a reference to the context, the meaning completely changes, right? And it is important to preserve the context. And only when you preserve the context, then you will understand as to which, then the entire story. So for example, if I were to tell you Dasharatha had 3 wives, and if you were to apply today's context to it, it'll sound very scandalous, right? Someone as great as Dasharatha, and he had 3 wives, right? And it becomes scandalous, because in today's world having more than one wife is not allowed. It's not considered right. And hence I always keep saying there's something called as a Kaladesh Niyam. What is Kaladesh Niyam? It helps us understand the context, helps us understand that reference to particular context, and that is the Prasangika Artha. So Pravachanankar has a duty to actually tell that specifically as to how it meant then. Or an Agni Pariksha. In today, if I were to tell somebody to do an Agni Pariksha, that person will get burnt. But in that particular Kal and that particular Desh, that particular rule of Agni Pariksha worked, because Agni had the ability to stand for witness. Right? It worked at that particular time. This is reference to context. And then of course you have the most important, which is the Dharma Artha or the Dharma Sukshma. Dharma is one, which is telling the words. Dharma Sukshma is the subtlety in Dharma. Right? Friendship is an important rule and a dharma to follow. A person who is being friend and has done some favor, the other person needs to return the favor. But at the same time, it cannot be against dharma. An employer-employee has a relationship, it needs to be honored, but it can never go against dharma. Right? A person who is being attached to the throne has a particular dharma, but it can never go against the larger dharma. The stories are of Karna, Drona and Bhishma. Right? Karna thought friendship is more important than being dharma. Drona thought his relationship to the employer was more important than dharma. And Bhishma thought his relationship to the throne is more important than dharma. Krishna had to come down, take an avatar, and actually explain that no, the relationship and the duty towards dharma is more important than even the relationship that you have. If your relationship is going against dharma, then you have to choose dharma. You cannot choose a relationship. That is the Dharma Sukshma. That is the subtlety in dharma, and that can only be given by God or maybe a guru who can come and explain the importance of dharma. All these are layers in a pravachan that actually happens, so which you will not get as a benefit when you are reading. One of the reasons I always suggest is to listen to senior pravachankars. There are a lot of such pravachankars in Marathi, Hindi and Tamil, Kannada. A lot of them do such superb stories. One should listen, and today with the help of technology, you have got all of them at the tip of your fingers, right? YouTube, everybody loads it on YouTube, right? You should actually listen to all of these. It will give you a lot of insight into a lot of these stories. Why I gave this background today is because if Ramayana has an X amount of morals to be given to us, Sundarakand has 10x, which means 10 times that. And today's scene that we are going to be talking of will have 3 times of what even Sundarakand offers. This scene alone will give you so much amount of morals, will give you so much amount of learnings as to how we are supposed to lead life. Right? And all of it will come from whom? All of it will come from a single source. It is Lord Hanuman. Right? So we'll try and cover each of that and try and cover as much in detail as possible. And hence it is important because there are a lot of subtle things in the story which would get missed very easily when we are just reading a story. So where were we? We had started with Sundarakand. Hanuman had taken a flight. He had 3 types of different obstructions, and he tackled appropriately. The love with love, smartness which required smartness, he tackled with smartness, and an obstruction which required a brute force, he tackled with brute force. Then he met Lankini, and then he entered Lanka. Kamba is also given how beautiful Lanka is, right? One of the points which I missed is while searching for Sita, Hanuman actually enters the palace and he finds the Pushpaka Viman. Pushpaka Viman is basically a plane which was usurped by Ravana from Kubera. Okay? Valmiki has given descriptions of that in different shlokas, and if those were to be deciphered, they will match the aerodynamics that we use as planes today. Okay, so plane's construct has been explained in Ramayana years before. Hanuman also does one smart thing. He just not is searching for Sita, something I again missed last time. He also happens to enter the place where a lot of arms, armaments and weapons have been kept. So he kind of takes a stock of Ravana's strength in terms of the kind of weaponry that he had. Then of course he tries to search, he doesn't get, then he gets dejected, he's almost about to quit, and then he rethinks, and then he comes back, he kind of collects himself, and then he kind of thinks deeply, And then he realizes that he is not prayed to Sita Ma. He prays to Sita Ma, and then immediately there's a lightning that hits, and he understands, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. He goes to the Ashok Vatika. Vatika means a tamed forest. A forest which has been tamed is called Vatika. So he goes to Ashok Vatika, and now he's on the tree called Shimshipa tree. Okay, that is where we had ended the last time's story. We'll start off from there now. So he's entered the Ashok one, and he's perched himself on a very tall tree called Shimshipa tree, and he is now thinking what does he do next, and is trying to search Sita, when he hears a slight sobbing noise, somebody who is crying mutedly, right? And that person is there's a lady, so he kind of bends down and he sees a lady, and he sees that this lady is crying. You know, she's crying very mutedly. She's not openly crying, but she's very sorrow of something. And then he finds out, how does she look? So she's a simply clad lady. She is in a dress which is befitting a Vanavasi. That is the dress she is wearing, right? She is wearing a dress which would generally get worn by people who stay in a jungle. So she is wearing a very simple sari and very sorrowfully weeping. She is looking like a resplendent yogini. There's a lot of grace and a lot of tej on her face. Now, because he's got a top view, now this is what Hanuman does. So he first goes to the leftmost extreme branch, takes a peep, then goes to the rightmost extreme branch, takes a peep, then goes to the frontmost extreme branch, and then takes a peep. So he's trying to actually analyze whether this really is Sita. There's a lady who's sitting, and he wants to take a best possible view, because when you're at the top, you don't get the best possible view of the person. You can't see the face completely. So it's a huge tree with a lot of branches spread. So he goes to the left side, the right side, the front side, and is trying to analyze whether this is Sita, and is trying to make up a mental analysis as to could this be Sita. So when he is doing this, he realizes a few things. He first of all realizes that this person hasn't seemed to have eaten for a very long time, or if at all eaten very little, okay, very little food that she's been partaking, very little fluid that this person has been really drinking. She's really pulled down, you know, in terms of weight. She's really pulled down, very sad, but her face has a lot of radiance. Okay, these are the initial assessment that Hanuman has been able to make from the top view. And she is glancing at a particular direction. So Hanuman aligns himself as to what is the direction that she is seeing, and he realizes that it is the same direction from where he came, which is north, right? Because Lanka is south to India, so it is north. So what is Sita doing? Sita is glancing towards the north side with the hope that Rama will come from that side, right? Valmiki has spent a couple of shlokas on that. So how is she waiting? The yearn, the heartburn with which she is watching, okay, is like a Jivatma waiting for her Paramatma. It's like a disciple waiting for the glance from a guru, right? That is the kind of yearn that she has in her, the heart that is burning for a person to come from that particular direction. And this is evident for Hanuman. Now Hanuman is actually looking at her and she's saying, wow, she looks so beautiful. She's like a lotus. She's like a sunflower who's waiting for a sun to bloom. He's now kind of almost made it to his mind that this is, and this probably 90% is Sita. Now he has to make himself 100% that this is Sita before he really approaches and talks to her. One important thing, having seen Sita now firsthand, the first thing that comes to his mind, okay, so what had happened when they were drawing up the teams and the kind of interest that Rama was showing up, you know, in ensuring the right team gets formed and is sent. One of the thoughts that come to Hanuman's mind is, he sees Rama and he says, oh, Rama is great, but why is so much attached to his wife? I mean, he's a Kshatriya, he can just get married to somebody else. Why is he so much attached to his wife? There's so much amount of love and affection that he has to one particular lady. This is what Hanuman is thinking about Rama himself. Okay? And when Rama gives the descriptions, that she is so beautiful, he also discounts. Yeah, I take your point. I mean, I can understand your feelings. You are a person in, I mean, this is his mental note, okay? You are in a person in love and distress, you find your wife to be the most beautiful. I mean, everybody has feels okay. His wife or spouse is maybe Aishwarya Rai. No, Aishwarya Rai. Sorry, today's heroine is who? Deepika Padukone, right? So everybody feels their wife to be the best. Okay, I kind of discount it. Is what Hanuman felt at that particular point of time. When Hanuman personally meets Sita, the first thought that comes to his mind is, what kind of a stone-hearted person Rama is. Rama doesn't even have emotions, that is still living and breathing after having separated from Sita. That's the first thought that comes from when he sees Sita, the divine beauty of Sita. Same person who thought, so what, we should have just got married, is now thinking that how can Rama even be alive of being separated from somebody as beloved as and divine looking as Sita. That's the first thought that comes from Hanuman. See, Hanuman's thoughts are very important, okay? And I keep coming to this. Why is it Hanuman's thought or his thought process critical? Because it is a reflection of us, right? It is a story that Valmiki tells for us. It is a story that has been created for us. We think like that, okay? We all think like that, but what we need to do after that is what Hanuman taught us. So for example, when Hanuman was taking a flight and was about to alight and he sees the glitter, he's at awe with the way Lanka is, right? And he's saying, such a beautiful place Lanka is. And then he stops and says, okay, that is not my purpose. I need to focus on my work. Focus, right? His work, what he had come for a particular purpose, and that focus has to be maintained. He taught us focus. Then when he was crossing and the kind of weaponry that he had, Ravana had, and the kind of distance that they had to travel, he thinks, how will Ravana ever come and defeat Ravana? Then he again collects himself and says, okay, that's a problem, not to shy away. It's a problem to be dealt, but not to be dealt now. Teaches us to prioritize. Problem in hand now is something else. I need to prioritize that. He improvises. His job was to only find Sita. But when he goes across Lanka, he's actually making a mental note of the geography, he's mental note of the security arrangement, he's making a mental note of the weaponry that they have. All of that is going to become useful when they wage a war, right? All of this is something that is going to be handy. So he improvises on the job, right? Most important, he comes to a conclusion and then corrects himself, which means it's called as revisiting. And this is a very common thing that we professionals do. When we, for example, as an auditors, when we go and we find certain evidences, we come across the evidences, we'll come across a certain initial prima facie conclusion. But that is a prima facie conclusion. We are supposed to revisit it. We are supposed to revisit because the prima facie conclusion might necessarily not be right. The moment he sees Mandodari, he jumps to conclusion. He literally jumps from one pillar to the other pillar. We saw that. He starts kissing his own tail, right? And then he holds himself. He says, what am I doing? He taps himself and says, wait, doesn't seem to be right. How can Mandodari be sleeping next to Ravana? I mean, how can Sita be sleeping next to Ravana? Right? That's the point that which means he makes a conclusion, then he revisits the conclusion, and then comes to a different viewpoint. Very important. He was almost about to quit. Right? He gets so dejected that he is almost about to quit. All of us face problems. All of us have issues. And most of the time we also come to a conclusion that no, we can't do anything about this problem. We need to quit. He doesn't quit because he looks at the future consequences of quitting, comes back and says, no, I cannot quit. I need to think harder. I need to think deeper. Ensure that I find a solution anyhow, and he ensures that he gets that solution. Hanuman gets all of these stories, if you were to really deeply think, something that all of us face on a daily basis. Hanuman teaches us how to deal with those problems. And that is the reason it's important to understand his mind, why is he thinking what he's thinking. Those are those points that is important for us. Now when he's actually seeing Sita, this is what is there in Valmiki Ramayana. This is actually an English translation that I got, okay. Valmiki actually tells these words in Sanskrit. He says how beautiful Sita is. Sita is like a beautiful dove who's fallen on ground amidst hungry wolves. It is like a pitiful holy word which has been strewn and plucked out of its context and used in a wrong context. Important. Look at the examples he gives. Look at the way poets have worked on this. It's like a prosperity sunk in an unmerited ruin. It is like a hope that has been shattered. It is like a faith which has been betrayed. This is how she is looking. It is like an intellect which has been muddled in ego. It is like a blameless purity colored in foul slander. This is just a copy paste that I have done, which is an actual meaning of the Valmiki's description of what Hanuman is seeing. Hanuman is seeing Sita, and that is what Valmiki is writing. Now, having seen, having appreciated, Hanuman starts doing one important thing. He says, no, let me sit and compare Rama and Sita, whether they are a match to each other. So he does what we all do. What do we do when we get two photos? We do a collage, right, in mobile. Juxtapose, and then we put a collage, right? So he does that. Rama, he's seeing mentally, he's seeing, right? So he puts his picture in this front, and Sita now is seeing. He's put her picture also in the front. Now, why is he doing that? Valmiki is enjoying what Hanuman is doing, okay? So Valmiki, what is he? He's basically a witness to the entire Ramayana, right? He's got a Divya Drishti, Dura Darshan. He can see, and that is what he writes what he's seeing, right? So he's seeing Hanuman do this analysis and is enjoying, and is now eagerly waiting to have a conclusion that Hanuman has about Rama and Sita and their match. So this is like that congruency test, which we do in triangles. All math students, children who are attending would know. There is SSS, SAS, and what is it? ASA test, right? Angle, side, side, and side angle, side. What you basically try and compare whether the two triangles are congruent. They are not same, they are congruent. So congruent is basically tulya, that is the right word in Sanskrit. So whether they are a match, whether they are similar, whether they are equivalent. It is not equal, it means equivalent. And whether they are a match for themselves. Okay, whether Rama and Sita are a match. Who's doing this? This has been done by Hanuman himself. Okay, I'm sure he's got better things to do, but he's doing this match. And he starts his comparison. He's saying by character, they are a match. By composure, they are a match. So he's ticking one by one. By age, they are a match. Now, by what does it mean by age, they are a match? Technically, Sita is 6 years younger to Rama. Okay. So, as per our dharma, technically, husband and wife need to have a certain ideal distance in age. Okay. Pardon me. This is what is there in our dharma. Okay. I'm just kind of stating that. We do find instances of different kind also. I am just stating what is there in the Dharma. So what it basically says is that at least 5 to 8 years distance between husband and wife has to be there. Then the relationship blossoms. There is a particular beauty that comes to the relationship. The difference between Rama and Sita was 6 years, and hence he says it is congruent, and hence he says it is tulya, it is matched. Okay? And he says, look at the family. On one side it is Suryavamshi, Dasharatha's lineage. The other side is the Chandravamshi. Janaka is the father, right? Illustrious parentage, illustrious pedigree, right? He says even there they are a match. And now by one, Hanuman is ticking. Valmiki is getting impatient. Valmiki is mentally thinking, quick, Hanuman, try and come to a conclusion. Please come to a conclusion. Hanuman comes to a conclusion saying they are a perfect match. They are saying Rama is made for Sita, Sita is made for Rama, and hence a perfect match. Valmiki comes in here and he says, yes, they are a perfect match, they are made for each other, but Sita's eyes are far more beautiful than Rama, and Sita's compassion is far more greater than Rama. These are the 2 points which Valmiki himself adds to the shloka. Critical, okay? Why I am covering at this particular detail is because this meeting is a beautiful meeting, and it needs to be understood from Hanuman's perspective. And this is the detail which Valmiki deals with it. So this way, he's okay. Because we are on conclusion, okay, I will try and cover a side story. So what happens is, Arjuna is in the battleground, right? In Mahabharata, everybody knows the broad contours of the story. On the first day, Arjuna sees his grandparent, his grandfather, his uncles and cousins and his guru on the opposite side, and is saying, am I to wage a war and kill these people? I cannot do that. They are all my brethren, they are all related to me. They are somebody whom I love. I am not going to do any of these. And he puts his Gandiva down and sits down. And then Krishna comes out and says, gives the entire discourse, which is popularly known as Bhagavad Gita, right? Bhagavad Gita is 700 shlokas, which is considered to be Sarva Veda Sangraha, which means all the Vedas, all the Shastras, all the Puranas, all the Upanishads, all of this, the body of knowledge that is comprised here, summarized in 700 verses, it is called Bhagavad Gita. All of that Krishna talks of Bhakti Marg, he talks of Jnana Marg, he talks of Karma Marga, he talks of who a yogi is, he talks of who a bhogi is, he talks of who's a demon, who's an asura, who's a naga, who's a gandharva, who's a kinnara, who's a deva, right? He talks of lot of philosophical stuff, he talks of rishis, he talks of gurus, he talks of all these things. Arjuna is confused. He's saying, what are the final questions that I asked? I just didn't want to wage a war. Okay, this is a joke side, okay? Tell me the conclusion. Okay, it's important to have a conclusion. You've spoken for 700 verses, you've spoken of a lot of things. Give me a conclusion, something to hold on to. I am all confused of what I'm supposed to remember. In the 18th chapter, the last chapter, almost at the fag end, which is the 66th verse, he says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. That is how he ends. After that, there are a few slokas and he ends. He says, forget all that I told. Okay, even if you forget all that I told, it's okay. Abandon all varieties of dharmas and simply surrender to me. If you surrender to me, I shall liberate you of all your sins. Arjuna said, all that I have to do is just fall at your feet, and you've been giving, for 2-3 hours you've been giving a discourse on Bhagavad Gita. No need, I would have fallen at your feet anyways. Krishna says, no, it's not that simple. What is important is why you feel falling at my feet simple is because I've given you a list of difficult things to do. And hence it becomes easy to you to fall at my feet. Forming conclusions is critical, right? Why I took this story is because Valmiki became impatient. Hanuman was going on ticking points. And he said, okay, now come to a conclusion because I want to add something. I thought I'll just cover that story for you. Now what Hanuman does is, he's done his analysis with Sita. He's more or less now 99% sure that the lady down under is Sita. He's kind of made it very clear for himself. But even before he approaches, he has to make few things more clear. So he starts now looking at the Rakshasis around. Valmiki again spent some time on describing each of the Rakshasis. Some of them has just one eye, some of them have 2 mouths, some of them have only 1 ear, some of the head is like a conch, twisted. You know how a conch is, like Shankha, twisted head. One of them apparently has an eye in the belly. Okay, some of them have 4 hands. They are all ugly looking. He goes on, and these are all okay. Now I'll tell a few which match with even us. Okay, some of them have red hair, some of them have brown hair. Okay, some of them have huge bellies, right? So I don't know whether to call demon or no, because we find a lot of them today of that description. But okay, Valmiki chose to call them demons. I didn't choose them to call demons. Okay. Now he's looking at all these Rakshasis. Suddenly they all get up and now making way for somebody. It's almost Brahma Muhurta. Brahma Muhurta is 1:45 minutes before Arunodaya, not Suryodaya. The first thing that comes is Arunodaya, then comes Suryodaya. So there's an ambient light that comes in the horizon, right? That is basically Arunodaya, which means Aruna, the charioteer of Surya, first appears in the horizon. Once he appears, then after a while sun appears. Okay, so first Arunodaya. Before Arunodaya, the 45 minutes is called as the Brahma Muhurta, which is when you are supposed to get up, clean yourself, have a bath and stuff like that. That's the 45 minutes time that you get to do all of that. So Brahma Muhurta. So as soon as we get up, all of us do what? Pick your mobile, good morning to 10 people, right? Even before you tell a good morning to your own wife, son, mother, father in the house, you want to tell good morning to your friends on the group, right? That is what we do. Ravana also had a similar, he didn't have mobile, but he had a similar routine. As soon as he got up, the first thing he used to do, not even brush and take bath, is to come down to Ashok Vatika to come and see Sita. You know, that was his hobby. Like we have the hobby of looking at our mobiles. So he used to come, and then he used to talk to Sita. Why did you marry me? You know, and you should get married to me. I will give you this. I will give you that. And that was his daily routine. That day also, Ravana comes in the morning. Hanuman is in the top. Sita is there. There are Rakshasis, and Ravana comes. This is the scene. As Ravana comes, Sita does what as a routine? She picks a blade of grass from the side and puts it in the middle. Okay? And then is watching the grass and now talking. So Ravana is there in the front. She's picked a blade of grass, kept it in the middle, and she's talking to the blade of grass, and Ravana is in the front. Now, why does she put this blade of grass? Okay? Periyavachan Pillai is a 12th century Vaishnava saint. For this particular instance, he has written 40 different reasons. Okay, look at our poets and their skills and the kind of elaboration they have done on Ramayana is awesome. Each act in Ramayana gets elaborated at this level. And then people expect me to complete Ramayana in 20 weeks. How can I do that? It's impossible, right? Each of it needs to be given enough weightage. Why did Sita put that particular blade of grass? Okay, I'll just give you 2 or 3 reasons. 40 reasons is difficult for me to cover. It's beyond my intellect also. Janaka apparently had told her that if you find an elderly person, a more knowledgeable person, a wiser person coming in your presence, always offer a seat. You stand. So Sita has stood now, and always offer a seat for a person to sit. If you are in a position where you cannot offer a seat to that person, offer a blade of grass. It is equivalent, tulya. It is equivalent to offering a seat. Hence, she offers a grass. Okay, this is a darbha grass. This is a sacred grass. The second one that Janaka has told is, if you ever encounter a person whom you do not like, never have a person you don't like, but if you encounter a person whom you do not like and you do not want to see his face, then always have a curtain drawn in his presence so that you don't see him and that person doesn't get to see you. When you do not have a curtain, when you do not have the luxury of having a curtain, put up a blade of grass in your presence and watch that grass. That grass will act like a curtain for you between you and that person, and hence the grass. What do donkeys eat? Donkeys eat grass. Ravana has been pestering. Okay, Sita has been there in Ravana's captivity for now almost 10 and a half months. Every day morning routine same. Ravana will get up, come, marry me, go. That is all he used to do. So he used to pester, right? Sita has been trying to explain, you have a family, you got your wife, you got children, I've got a family, I've got a husband. Why are you even doing this? He's trying to explain this to Ravana. But it's of no use. He is acting like a dumb as a donkey, right? And grass is a feed for a donkey. So the grass has been given to him to eat. Okay? This is one of the reasons which Periyavachan Pillai says that there is a grass that he is given, she is giving to the donkey called Ravana as a feed. Because he is a guest at her place, that is a feed that she is giving to Ravana. These are 3 reasons I am giving. There are 40 different reasons that Periyavachan Pillai talks of. And so on and so forth. So now Ravana typically is saying, I am the most powerful person on the earth, you should marry me. I have been asking you for the last almost 10 and a half months. I will ensure that you will be my first queen. I will ensure that you have all the powers in hand. You don't have to worry at all. Okay, today I think I might take a little extended time. Okay, it's almost 7:40 and I have not even reached anywhere close to where Hanuman can see Sita. And I would want to finish that as an event today. Give me 10-15 minutes more. So Ravana is kind of pestering her and Sita is saying, what are you even talking of? What wealth are you talking of? You are just owning Lanka. I am the daughter-in-law of what? I am a daughter-in-law of Koshala Rajya, which owns a good part of the earth. Right? I am Dasharatha's daughter-in-law, I am Janaka's daughter, I am the most powerful and the most handsome person's wife. What are you even talking of, Ravana? There is no point in talking all this. You please release me and ensure that you send me back with respect. That's the only way out of this. Otherwise, you will get killed by Ravana. That is all that is going to happen. So Ravana is very angry and he leaves. And as he leaves, he turns back and now he says this. He says, I am giving you 1.5 months. He had given 12 months when he got her in captivity. He had given a time period of 12 months. There's only 1.5 months more left, Sita. If you do not agree to my proposal, after 1 year, I'll ask these guys to cut you and have you as breakfast. Okay, so that is what Ravana has given the ultimatum. So she's got another 1.5 months left to be alive. Sita, and then he tells all the demons, around Rakshasis who are guarding, they will go ensure that you convince her to marry me. And they all start coming close to her, they all start coming. Sita immediately goes into a shell, she kind of really hides her face, closes her eyes. And they are all kind of very close, married. If Ravana had asked us, we would have got married long time back. He's been pestering you for such a long time. You should get married. What is this that you're doing? Kind of convincing. Immediately amongst them, there is a huge lady that comes and drives these demons out and says, go away. if Rama ever to come here and defeat, he will surely come here and he will defeat, and he should surely kill all of you all. So they all get afraid of that and they all go away. This lady is called as Trijata. Okay? Trijata happens to be whose daughter? She happens to be Vibhishana's daughter. Vibhishana is Ravana's younger brother. If you remember, we had already seen Hanuman saw his house with a Vaishnava Lakshana, which means it has got all the beauty of a house of a devotee of a Vishnu. Right? So he had already marked that house as a special house when he was searching for Sita. This lady is Trijata. Trijata simply means a lady with 3 plaits of hair. You generally listen to 1 plait or 2 plaits, right? Ladies put only 2 plaits maximum. But Trijata had so much of hair that she had to put 3 plaits. Okay, that is why she was called as Trijata. Now, Parashara Bhatta. Okay. Now see, look at the way this poets have enjoyed. So Trijata, when she says, go away, don't trouble Sita, fall at her feet, otherwise when Rama comes and defeats Ravana, he will kill you. Fall at her feet now and ask for pardon. Sita, the moment she hears this, she says, so nice of you to say that, Trijata. If Rama were to come and really win the battle, I am okay, I will pardon, I will ensure that I will ask for pardon from Rama. These people have not even fallen at her feet. Okay? Parashara Bhatta, another 12th century poet, enjoys this particular moment and he says, look at the karuna of Sitama. Okay? He says, when Kakasura, we'll come to that story when we go ahead, that story will come today. There's a demon called Kakasura who's taken the form of a crow. When he pestered Sita and when he came for Sharanagati, when he fell at the feet of Rama, Rama pardoned him. Okay? When Vibhishana comes and does Sharanagati, fell at his feet, Rama pardoned him also and took him into his gang. But look at Sita. Sita pardoned even those Rakshasis who did not fall at their feet. Right? That is the karuna of a mother. That is the karuna of a mother, because mother can pardon a person who is doing mistake, the son or children doing mistake, even without them asking for apology. Our fathers will generally expect apology, right? You please tell sorry only, then I will pardon you. But mothers are beyond, right? Mothers will pardon them by heart. They will pardon them even without them, children, without telling them sorry. That is the karuna that even we spoke of earlier. Valmiki also spoke of that. Karuna of Sita Ma is 10 times more than Rama. This is what Parashara Bhatta as a poet enjoyed. Trijata now then starts telling a story. Okay, she says, last night I saw a dream. Sita, don't be afraid at all. Trijata is an elderly lady. So child, don't be afraid at all. I saw a dream. And in that dream I saw that Ravana was half naked with all oil smeared on him, sitting on a donkey and going towards the south side. South for us is considered to be the Yamadwar, the direction of death. Okay? So he's saying he's sitting on a donkey with a black face and going towards south, so which is a very good omen for you. Not only that, I also saw that Rama and Sita, both of you all, are sitting on a huge throne. Okay? And a lot of people are falling at your feet. So this is a dream that I saw early morning around 4 o'clock. So I think that will surely be true. Sita, don't worry at all. Sita is of course saying, I don't know what hope I have. It's already 10.5 months and there is no news of Rama. I don't even know whether Rama is searching for me. I just hope that your dream comes true, Trijata. But I really don't know. I have no hope. At that point of time, her left eye, left hand and her left foot twitches. For ladies, when the left hand, left eye, left leg twitches, which means it is considered as a good woman. Trijata says, see, it is twitching. I'm sure something good is going to happen, child. Don't worry. Very soon you will come to know about Rama and Rama is going to come and save you. That is what Trijata is saying. All of this is being witnessed by whom? Hanuman is sitting like a small monkey on the top of the tree and watching all of this patiently for everybody to finish their dialogue, to finish off their screen time and then go out of the scene so that he can come down and then finish off with his work. All those demons now go to sleep. Now why do they go to sleep? Because they are all Nishachara. They have been awake all night. For them it is now sleeping time. So all the demons have gone to sleep. Trijata also now goes to sleep. Okay? Now comes the most beautiful scene in entire Ramayana. So if Sundarakand is considered to be the most beautiful chapter in entire Ramayana, Hanuman meeting Sita is considered to be the most singular scene in the entire Ramayana. Birth of Rama, not so beautiful. Birth of Sita, not so beautiful. The moment when Rama sees Sita and they both fall in love at first sight, not so beautiful. The moment they get married, not so beautiful. The moments that they spent as 12 years, not so beautiful. The moment of the reunion after marriage, not so beautiful. The moment where Hanuman meets Sita is considered to be the most beautiful and has got loads of messages for us as lesser mortals. Now what happens? Now you have to imagine, right? Sita is now sitting, she is not feeling sleepy at all. For her it is morning, right? No mobile, no WhatsApp message, no SMS, or no message from Rama at all. She's waiting for some kind of an indication to come from Rama. Had WhatsApp been there, I don't know, maybe Ravana would have blocked all the signals, so we don't know. So she's waiting for some kind of a message and yearning for him, and she's very sad. Hanuman on top of the tree now takes a careful glance at the entire geography whether anybody is awake. He now carefully looks at whether there is going to be any disturbance, whether they have had a deep slumber and are sleeping and snoring away. And now starts thinking what is going to be the most difficult job for him to do. Him flying the ocean, 10%, 20%. Him searching Sita, 30%. Him now going to meet is the next 50%. Okay, it is the most difficult job for him to do. Now imagine, why I am covering this in such depth is, we have to put ourselves in Hanuman's position. Now if I were to meet a person of an opposite gender, this is critical. Okay, if I were to meet a lady, or if a lady in this group wants to meet a particular gentleman, unknown person, in an unknown area, suppose in a mall, in a completely different place, in a mall maybe, okay. Now if I am supposed to meet a lady in a mall whom I've never met, I don't know, there will be a lot of inhibitions, okay. I have not seen her, first of all I have to search her, I have to be 100% sure before I talk to her, right. In a mall you will find a lot of ladies, right. I can go on asking, are you that person, are you that person, I will only get slapped, right. That is one. I have to talk to the right person and ensure that I also make a right impression on that person so that that person doesn't think wrong about me. That kind of an inhibition Hanuman is carrying, that is important for us to understand. Why Hanuman is taking care of it so much. Suppose he jumps, Sita will get startled. She might shout, everybody will be awake. Even if he walks and goes and then stands in her presence and says, I have come from Ram, it's a monkey who's talking, right? She will anyway get startled, right? So he has to now do something which ensures that Sita doesn't get startled and still has the faith and the trust to talk with a stranger, right? So it's like a final exam and he can't fail. We all give midterm, that is flying, that he flew from one end to the other end in the ocean. Then he gave the final exam. What is that? 12th standard final board exam, which is searching Sita. Now he has to give the NEET or what CLAT or what JEE. He can't afford to fail there at all. That is the most important exam that he needs to give. That is what he has to do when he is going to meet Sita. It's very important for us to understand. God sometimes gives us multiple chances when we make mistakes. But there are some moments in life where He will not give multiple chances at all. He will only give one chance. And if we mess up on that chance, we've had it and we'll have to live with it for our life. During the course of education, as students, we don't study. If we do not give enough attention to education and focusedly study, we'll end up ruining our careers. We make that mistake when we are young. God will not again ever give that chance again. Once you're 20, 21, then again that chance of being a young boy to study or young girl to study is gone permanently. That chance is given between 5 and 20, 21. You have to make gold out of that, right? You have to study. That one chance you have to study, period, right? I hope my son is also listening. He is not here now. He's sitting in a class. This example was for him and for all the children here. Important, right? We cannot afford to make a mistake when we are given a chance. Sometimes God doesn't repeat a chance. This is that kind of a chance. Hanuman has got one chance. He messes up, he's messed up the entire thing. He makes good out of it, there's a good thing that's going to follow. With such great amount of pressure and duress, Hanuman is now going to meet Sita. He thinks deep. and he's up against time. He doesn't have the time of the world, right? He doesn't have the luxury of time. These people are sleeping. He has to make gold of that chance. He has to ensure that he gets enough trust out of her. He exchanges a dialogue and then leaves. He has to do all of it by the time these demons are sleeping. Then he realizes there's only one thing that is going to help here, and that is the word Rama. Okay? So what Hanuman does is this. He starts singing the entire Ramayana. He just doesn't utter the word Rama. He starts singing the entire Ramayana. He's considered to be an Visharad in singing. Okay? He is a Navavyakarana expert. He is an expert in everything. Hanuman is an expert in everything. Assumes a very sweet voice and now starts in a very feeble, soft tone. Doesn't reach anybody, not in huge, full-throated voice. Soft, feeble voice, he starts singing Ramayana, and this is an important Ramayana because who is singing? Hanuman himself is singing this Ramayana. He's saying, who's Dasharatha, who's Kaushalya, Sumitra, Kaikeyi. He talks of the Putra Kameshti Yajna, Rishiyashringa, Rishi coming there. He talks of the Payasam, he talks of how they consumed it. He talks of the birth of the children, he talks of their 12 years of growth. He talks of Yudhishthira coming, he talks of Subahu, he talks of Tataka killing. He talks of the yajna that Vishwamitra did. He talks of how Vishwamitra taught them the astras. He talks of how Vishwamitra takes them to the Ahilya ashram. He talks of how Vishwamitra takes them to Mithila Nagari. He talks of the marriage between Rama and Sita and all their brothers. He talks of the procession coming back. He talks of Parshurama Garvabhanga, the subduing of Parshurama. Okay? He talks of the 12 years of happy living. He talks of, let me repeat the entire Ramayana, okay? This is important for us to hear. He talks of the 12 years of Rama and Sita living happily. He talks of Manthara. He talks of Kaikeyi becoming angry and asking for the 2 boons. He talks of Dasharatha being angry on Kaikeyi. He talks of Rama, Sita and Lakshmana leaving. He talks of the sorrow of Ayodhya, seeing their beloved prince leave. He talks of how he befriends Guha. He talks of having crossed the Ganga river. He talks of Dasharatha's death. He talks of reaching Chitrakoot. He talks of how Bharat Milap happens and the beautiful Paduka which was exchanged. He talks of Aranyakanda. He talks of how he killed the demons, how he protected the rishis. He talks of reaching Panchavati and building the house there. He talks of meeting Jatayu. He talks of meeting Shurpanakha and how her nose and ears got cut. He talks of how the entire news reached Kharadushana. He talks of the war between Kharadushana and the split second killing of 14,000 people. He talks of how that news reaches Ravana. He talks of the entire Maricha coming as a golden deer. He talks of Sita's desire for that. He talks of how Rama and Lakshmana left for Maricha. Till here, Sita knows the entire Ramayana, right? Now Hanuman is going to utter or narrate a Ramayana which Sita was absent because she gets abducted. She doesn't know this part of the Ramayana at all. And this is an important information that Hanuman delivers to Sita. Then talks of how Sita gets abducted. He then talks of how Jatayu's moksha was given. Rama and Lakshmana start the search. They first meet Jatayu, give moksha to Jatayu. They witness Shabari's moksha. Then they meet Hanuman. He mentions himself. He says Hanuman. Why he mentions himself? Because he is going to introduce himself in few minutes, right? Which means he has to place himself into the story and show that he has befriended Rama. Okay, so he places himself in the story. He says how Hanuman meets Rama and Lakshmana. He takes them to Sugriva. How Sugriva and Rama become friends. How they kill Vali. How Sugriva was reminded of his promise. How Lakshmana got angry about it. And how a search party was done. How the south party left. How they reached the beach. And how Hanuman flew, defeated and controlled all the obstacles. Reached Lanka. How he searched for Sita all over Lanka. How he came to Ashokvana, how he's sitting on the Shimshipa tree. Ma, I am above you, please see me. That is where he comes and ends the entire Ramayana. Okay. Now Sita is wondering, where is this beautiful voice coming from? Such a beautiful voice. It is so endearing and my heart is going out for this particular voice. It is like, it's coming with there's a whole surge of love that is coming for this person. And it is a love of a mother to a son, right? And I want to see you. And the moment Hanuman says, Ma, I am here on top of you, see me. Sita sees Hanuman. Hanuman does namaskar from the top. He's still not got down from his place. Now this is equivalent to how. So there's this children when they are 2-3 years, when they are innocent, they play this hide and seek with their parents. My son used to play this and I used to love this. He used to hide, okay? Once hidden, I used to ask him, are you ready? And from the place where he is hidden, he used to say, I'm ready. Okay, which means he's actually letting out himself where he's hidden. But he used to not know that. He used to innocently say, I'm ready. But I am supposed to search everywhere and then to show the surprise that I have searched him, right? It is the same kind that Hanuman did. Hanuman is hiding there, but he's giving away himself. I'm ready, I'm here sitting on top of you. And when that happiness that a parent gets in seeing his son or in seeing his daughter is the happiness that Sita is getting, meeting for the first time. But there's a natural affection that has grown. There's such beautiful, and then she's thinking, well, could this be the monkey who sang such a beautiful rendition of Ramayana? It seems doubtful. How can he sing in such a beautiful voice? Just a minute. She's saying, but there is some kind of an affection that is growing for him. So then he says, son, come down. This is what Sita tells to Hanuman. Remember, Hanuman is in the form of a small, sweet-looking monkey. Okay? So he's saying, son, come down. Now what Hanuman does? Hanuman still doesn't jump. Right? Hanuman slowly walks from the farthest possible point on the tree bark, from the opposite side, takes a circuitous route, takes almost a half pradakshina, and at a distance goes and stops, bends himself down, does namaskar, and before doing namaskar he says, Ma, I am doing namaskar. He announces what he's going to do. Ma, I am doing vandan to you, bows down and sits like this. I don't know if you have seen this pose of Hanuman where his one knee is like this and the one knee is bent down. Okay? And he's sitting like this with a bowed head. He's not even seeing her eye to eye. Okay? Now all of this is basically a confidence building measure that Hanuman is doing. Now let me cover a couple of minutes on why he did this. And this is what really makes Hanuman Hanuman. Okay? Had he jumped, it would have startled. She's now just started gaining a light amount of trust in this. She's in the midst of demons, right? You have to understand, 10.5 months midst of demons who are able to change shape, everything. They can even become a monkey. But now she's the very word of Rama has helped her soothe her mind, right? Some amount of trust she has gained in this sweet looking monkey. And she has now asked him to come down out of her own choice. If she jumps and they start saying, oh, finally I got you and finally you spoke to me, how much I had to search you, I had to go there, I had to fight so much obstacles. When I saw Mandodari and I saw it was you. Had he told all this, you would have lost all the faith that Sita had gained. What he does, he just comes, he's at a distance, he stops. What he does, two things. One, he calls her Ma, right? A relationship between a mother and a son is undoubtedly the most purest and the untainted across ages, right? That breaks the first ice. Secondly, he does namaskar. He bows himself down. That further mellows her down. First of all, he's taken the name of Rama, right? So he's gone 3 steps ahead. And then he doesn't start off with his introduction. He keeps quiet, waiting for her to speak first. He could have started off, now that she's asked him to come down, he could have started off with talking, right? He doesn't talk. He just says, Ma, I'm doing Vandan, and waits. Waits for Sita to take the first initiative to talk. Now Sita asks, Vanar, who are you? Now this is a classic answer only where Hanuman can give this answer. I'll again spend a couple of minutes. When somebody asks, who are you, what do we say? Suppose my name is, say, whatever, okay, say Govind Vallabh Pant, okay? What will I say? My name is Govind Pant or Govind Vallabh Pant. What is my name? Govind. My father's name is Vallabh and my surname is Pant, right? So I introduce myself, my name, my father's name and my surname. So my surname is my family from where I belong, right? Standard introduction we give across contexts. Whoever asks, in whatever context we are asked, that is what we give. That is what we are, right? Hanuman is different, right? Till now, Any other position, he would have given a different introduction. I am Kesari Nandan Hanuman, or Anjani Putra Hanuman, or Vayu Putra Hanuman, or even Sugriva Sachiva Hanuman. That is the introduction that he gives when he meets Ram and Lakshmana for the first time, right? A contextual introduction. That is what Hanuman was capable of doing, right? Now look at the contextual introduction that is done here. When she asks Vanara, who are you? He answers, I am Ramaduta Hanuman. Now, each of the word has meaning. Okay? He could have told, I am Hanuman, who's Doot of Ram. Doot means messenger. Okay? I am Hanuman, the messenger of Ram. Possible? I am Hanuman, Ram's messenger. Possible? Right? I am a messenger, Hanuman, from Ram. All of this is possible. Right? But he chose to utter the first word as Ram, the second word as Doot, and the third word as Hanuman. Right? Here introducing himself as Hanuman is inconsequential. Whether it is Angad or Hanuman or Vali or for that matter Vibhishana himself. For Sita it doesn't matter who that person is. Right? What matters the most for Sita is from where has he come. And the news that he's come from Rama needs to be told to her first. That is important. The person who's standing there is only, that message could have been brought by anybody else, right? From Hanuman's perspective. So he understands that introducing himself as Hanuman is not important. That is the last thing. It's important, but the last thing. What is first is Ram. The moment you utter the word Ram, she further gets mellowed down. And then the fact that he's a messenger of that Ram. And then, I'm just an inconsequential Hanuman. It doesn't matter. It could have been anybody else. And hence it is Ramaduta Hanuman. Right? This requires a lot of smartness. Okay? And I'll come to this particular point. There are two more occasions when Hanuman uses this smartness. Okay? Again, when Hanuman meets Rama, I will not break the suspense because it's a beautiful story I would want to cover at that point of time. He uses a grammar, a method of telling that he has found Sita in a particular manner. Again, when he meets Bharata, after all the 14 years, Rama sends Hanuman saying that Bharata will jump into the funeral pyre if you don't reach at the end of the 14 years. You have to go and give a message that I am arriving. He uses the same smartness, and I will cover at that particular point of time. This smartness is critical, and this is something that all of us have to understand. So I do this with a lot of team members. We all must be experiencing. When you give a work to your colleague, and after 2 days when you ask that person whether you finished that work, that person will start off with what? You gave me the work, then I had to search for the document for 2 days, and then I spoke to a couple of people and they didn't have the information, then I had to put in efforts and I found it on the server in a folder which was archived, and then I had to work overnight. I just asked whether the work has got over. First tell me whether the work has got over, right? You struggled, you put in efforts, very good, I'll appreciate that, I'll give you an extra bonus for that. But what is it that I'm worried about? Whether the work got done. You have to first tell the work got done. Yes, the work got done. I took so much effort to do the work. But that's not the way it works, right? They will first tell you make you listen all the efforts that they took, and then you will say I did 100 mistakes and then I corrected and then I finished the work, right? This is what employees are, this is what we all do. Why employees? Even we ourselves also do the same thing, right? When we say we have to set right the tap and the plumber needs to come, I called the plumber, he didn't come, then I called him the third time, then I called some other plumber. Is the work got done? Is the water flowing stopped? That is important. Yes, the water flowing has stopped. And then you can tell the story that, I called these many people and then that is how the work got done. The first important thing is to ensure that you give a message that the opposite person wants to hear. Understand from that person's perspective. Me being Hanuman is not critical. Me having gone through all the problems, I will get enough time to tell that. I first looked at Mandodari and I jumped pillars is inconsequential. Me being Rama's messenger is important for Sita to hear. That is the first message that he gives. Ramaduta Hanuman. Okay? Vyakyankar spent about half an hour just explaining the importance of what Ramaduta Hanuman is. Now Hanuman doesn't stop there. Hanuman then asks, Mata, who are you? He's already made up his mind, 99.9.5% he's made up his mind that this is Sita. He's seen Ravana come and pester her. He's seen Trijata talk to her as Sita, right? And still he wants to confirm. Why? Because he wants to be doubly sure that he's still talking to Sita, not that these demons are trying to play a game with him. Right? He wants to still hear it from her mouth. So he's saying, Mata, who are you? You look like an Apsara in Indraloka. You look like Goddess Lakshmi in Vishnu Loka. You look like Ma Saraswati in Brahma Loka. You look like Parvati in Shiva Loka. Such radiance you have. Ma, are you the daughter of Janaka? Are you the daughter-in-law of Dasharatha? Are you the beloved wife of Prabhu Sri Ram? This is the question that he asks. Now Sita answers. He says, son, yes, I am the same Sita. And then Sita starts off on her version of Ramayana. She starts from her birth. Okay? She starts from her birth, how I will not entirely repeat the Ramayana. She starts from her birth. She says how she met Rama, her marriage, then the Vanavas, till Panchavati and the golden deer, same story. Right? After that, Hanuman spoke of what Rama and Lakshmana experienced. Right? Now Sita is going to say of what she has experienced. So there are two branches. After a particular point, there are two branches to Ramayana, right? So now Sita talks of what she experienced, how she flew in the Pushpaka Viman, how Jatayu came to help, Jatayu got killed, she threw the bundle of jewelry on a particular Parvat, then she came to Lanka, and how for the last 10.5 months Ravana has been pestering her to marry. She is sorrowful and she is sad. She doesn't even know if Rama is searching for her, is where she comes and ends her section of Ramayana. This is a very beautiful and an important part in Ramayana, where Ramayana itself gets uttered twice within Ramayana. Okay? So we have heard three Ramayanas. One Ramayana which Valmiki has given us. There is one Ramayana which Hanuman gave us within Ramayana. And then there is one Ramayana which was uttered by Sita within Ramayana. Right? And hence Sundarakand becomes that much more important. Why Sundarakand is important is because Ramayana itself gets uttered twice. Ramayana itself has so much benefit. Sundarakand is even more beautiful and has got more benefits. Within Sundarakand you got Ramayana being covered twice. And from whom? From Hanuman himself and from Sita herself. Right? So a lot of people think Valmiki himself repeated it. There was no need for repeat. Valmiki didn't repeat. Valmiki is simply writing what is happening. Hanuman uttered Ramayana, he wrote Ramayana. What Hanuman told, right? Sita uttered the entire Ramayana, he wrote Ramayana again within Ramayana. That is all he's done. He's just a scribe. He's just writing what he's seeing. Hanuman and Sita actually uttered Ramayana, and that is the Ramayana that we hear. This is a beautiful segment, and this is important, right? This is very important for us because the entire Ramayana gets summarized and uttered for us. Now what happens is, now Hanuman, for a moment, what he does is, he takes a step ahead. Okay? I think I might extend my brief. I'm so sorry. Hope I can continue for another 10 minutes. Is it okay? Yeah? Thanks. I'm taking your silence as an okay. Thank you. So now Hanuman, what he does is, he takes a step ahead. Okay, only to test whether Sita has got enough trust in him for him to come closer. Sita immediately takes back, closes her eyes. Okay, Hanuman realizes that she is not enough trust is not yet built. He again goes back and sits. Now Sita asks. Sita says, "You claim to have come from Rama. Show me a proof." Not right. She says, "Tell me a proof." Okay, describe Rama. And when she says describe Rama, she actually uses these words. She says, describe Rama's hands and thighs. That is there in Valmiki Ramayana, okay? Now, what do you mean by thighs? Why will Rama show his thighs to Hanuman? Right? And why will even Sita think that Rama would have shown his thighs to Hanuman? Right? What it basically means is that give me a detailed description. If you have come from Rama and you consider yourself as a messenger, which means you know him in and out, you know him fairly well, you need to give me a detailed description. That is all it means. Doesn't mean that you have to describe his thighs actually. Hanuman takes a moment and he says, now he is to give a test. He is now going to give 2 oral tests, okay? And he can't afford to fail in this, okay? And he is just praying that these questions are not out of syllabus for him, right? Hanuman says, he thinks for a moment and he says, Ma, I cannot describe Rama in words. He is beyond description. That is all he says. Sita says, yes, you are right. You have passed in the first test. Okay. Now she says, I have another question. Hanuman is just hoping that it is a simple question like the first one. Now she puts a googly. Now she says, Rama and Lakshmana, how did they befriend Vanaras? Is her next question. Now in simple terms it seems demeaning, which means Rama and Lakshmana, what, sons of Dasharatha, Ayodhya, princes, befriending Vanaras. That is the, people would think that is how she is asking that question. It is not in that spirit. The perspective is that Rama, it seems, will not befriend anybody without the permission of his wife Sita. You can just imagine what a standard has been set by Rama for us poor husbands. Right? I mean, imagine all our friends getting approved by our wives. Too much to expect. I don't even know why Rama did that. Right? But Rama was like that. Even when he befriended Guha, he tacitly asked for Sita's permission. Sita nodded and then he befriended Guha. So Rama is somebody who's so much of a Patni Vrata, so much of a person who will work as per Dharma, is that he will not befriend anybody unless and until he's got an explicit permission from his wife. It is this question that Sita is asking, how come Rama and Lakshmana befriended you without me having approved it? Okay, Sita was not there at all to approve. How is that she can approve? Which means how is it that Rama befriended you? Hanuman understands the perspective. Hanuman says, no ma, it is not like that. When you were flying in the Pushpaka Viman and you threw the jewels down, and when Rama and Lakshmana came to meet us, we showed those jewels, this bundle of jewels. Rama and Lakshmana, that jewels they thought as the okay from you for us to become friends. Okay, so it was symbolic that you have blessed us to become friends with Rama and Lakshmana. That has been assumed as an indication from you, and hence they have befriended. So Hanuman was smart. He was chatur, right? Vak patutvam, which means his ability to speak smartly was at its extreme. No amount of question can be out of syllabus for him, right? You cannot beat him with such googlies at all. So Hanuman was very smart and he understands the question, its spirit, the perspective, and gives an answer that satisfies Sita. The next question she asks is, how is Rama? Hanuman says, Rama is sad, he is weeping, he constantly is weeping and is yearning to meet you. He doesn't eat well, he doesn't drink well, and is growing thin in the grief of having got separated from you. This is what Hanuman says. Sita, after listening to this, smiles and becomes happy, which is very unlikely Sita, right? Husband is unhappy for having been separated. They are going through such a turmoil, both of them separated for a year or so. And Sita is becoming happy that Rama is sorrow. Why? Because they are humans. They are showing our emotions to us, right? She's sorrow because she's happy because, oh, okay, Rama also is as unhappy as I am. He is also yearning to meet me. So that is an indication that Rama is also searching for me and she's feeling bad. Look, this is typical relations, okay? This is typical relations. One is when suppose a husband and wife, okay, or maybe a boyfriend and a girlfriend, okay? How much ever times he says, I love you, it will only be of so much value. When a friend of that boyfriend, comes and tells, that guy is mad for you, he constantly keeps thinking about you, that gives an additional happiness to the person. Why is it so? Because that is confirmation by a third person of his feelings, right? So this is important. This is a typical human behavior, right? Sita wanted a confirmation from Hanuman that Rama is also equally unhappy of having been separated, right? It is that particular feeling where she becomes suddenly happy. Okay, Rama also is unhappy and is equally in sorrow of having been separated from me. Having said this, now these are all intangible proofs. Okay, there are two types of proofs which are getting exchanged. One is a tangible proof and one which is an intangible proof. Both are important. Okay, Now she asks for a tangible proof. She's saying, you claim to have come from Rama, show me some symbol that you are carrying from Rama. That is the time that Hanuman whips out the ring that Rama had given to Hanuman and shows that ring, saying, Ma, this is the ring that Rama has given to me. The moment that Sita picks that ring, she is ecstatic. She is so happy. Why is she so happy? Because that is the ring that her father had given to Rama. Okay, so it is a property of her mother, Maika, right? So it is a ring that her father before the marriage had given to Rama. So she becomes ecstatic looking at the ring of her father. She is also happy to note that Rama has not lost it. Okay, and Rama had the good sense to give this ring to Hanuman to show as a symbol. So she becomes happy. At the same time, she is also sad. And there is an Upakatha for this. The Upakatha is, when they were in Panchavati, what happens is, they have plenty of time, right? Vanavas, I mean, you are finished with your cooking and there's nothing else to do. So they are spending time playing games. So they were playing what we call today as Ludo, Chausat, that is the game that they were playing. In a moment, what happens is, it's kind of a friendly cheating that is happening, and Sita is trying to move a particular coin. Rama holds her hand. Sita wants to get her hand out, and in that particular moment, Rama's hand hits her face and he wipes off the kunku from her forehead. Understood? Right? So in that moment, it's a tender moment of love, right? They're just playing a friendly game. In that moment, in that mischief, his hand touches her forehead and the kunku gets wiped off. Now Sita is a pativrata. She becomes very upset. How can you wipe off my kunku? Right? And then she doesn't talk for 3 days. Now Rama is trying to pacify her. And we thought only we, husband and wife fight. Rama and Sita also fought, and they didn't speak for each other for 3-4 days. This is there in Valmiki Ramayana, okay? They don't speak for 3-4 days. Rama is trying his best to pacify and Sita is in no mood to listen. So one day, beautiful morning, what he does is, they are on Godavari banks. On the bank he sees Sita standing at a distance and nobody else. This ring he removes, he hides it in the sand and he starts shouting, oh please help me, somebody come and help me, my ring is lost. The moment Sita hears that her father's ring is lost, she comes and searches. She searches and gives it, and then there's a patch-up that happens between Rama and Sita. Sita is reminded of that instance and she thinks it is the same ring that united them then and is uniting them today. Right? It is the same ring that Hanuman has got. It is the same ring that united them at Panchavati. It is the same ring that has come as a message that Rama is searching, Rama will come. There's a positive news after 10.5 months of misery. The first news of the happy news that Hanuman has got is with this ring. So she realizes that it's the same ring that Rama's that has united them again. Now Hanuman asks for a counter proof. I'm sorry, I'm going to really extend all time, or should I stop? I don't know. Okay, give me 5 minutes. I'll complete one good segment and then stop. Yeah. Now Hanuman asks for a proof. Okay. Hanuman says, Ma, no, you also, can you give me a proof? Rama himself has asked that I have to come back with some proof so that I can prove that I have met you. Right? She gives what is called as a chudamani. Chudamani is basically a clip that you put to collect your hair and hold it. Okay? Okay, here it is important. The one question that people might ask is, when Kaikeyi had asked to give away all jewels, when Sita had given away all jewels and Rama had given away all their jewels, how come this ring and chudamani remained? Right? These both happened to be the jewels that Janaka had given to Sita, and hence technically form a part of Stridhan. No one has a right to take it away from her. Important note, okay? It is a Stridhan earmarked for the lady, and nobody, even Kaikeyi, had no right to ask for that, and that is how they carry it. Now what is this Chudamani? So there are basically 3 different manis that come out of the Sagar Manthan that happened. The first is the Chintamani, which Indra kept it for himself. The second is Kaustubhamani, that Vishnu kept in his chest. And the third is the Chudamani, which Vishnu thought he will give to Shiva. Shiva is a Bairagi, right? And Parvati is Vishnu's sister. So he thought Shiva might not be taking any gifts home, so he might as well give something so that he can go back home and tell Parvati, look, I got some gift for you. So he gives it to Shiva. Shiva takes it to Parvati. Parvati by mistake, when she's traveling with Shiva, loses it. It falls on Janakapuri. Sita picks it up and uses it. That is the story. Okay? That is how Sita got that Chudamani. This Chudamani, Sita gives now to Hanuman. Okay? I'm now trying to cover it a little fast. Okay? Now, this is the tangible proof. Hanuman says, Ma, I also need an intangible proof. I'll cover quickly on why both. Tangible proof, there's a possibility that Rama might have lost his ring somewhere, Hanuman might have picked up somewhere and claiming to be his Duta. Right? Hence, there was an intangible proof that was to be given. Only intangible proof is not going to work. Anybody can see Rama from a distance and say, oh, he's beyond expression. Hey, you can't describe him. Right? So even that will not work. So both were important. One is an intangible proof and other is a tangible proof. Similarly, Sita also gives one Chudamani. Will that be enough? No, it will not suffice. Why? Good chance that Ravana would have plucked it and given it off to some demon. And Hanuman went and met a demon and took Chudamani and came and said, oh, I met Sita. Not that he doubts Hanuman, not that Hanuman would do that. But there is a chance. You have to understand from Rama's perspective that it's a distressed mind. Right? So, tangible proof is one. But he is also now to give an intangible proof. So, he says, tell me a story about you and Rama which you and Rama alone will know. Nobody else knows. So, Sita now narrates a story of a person called Kakasura. Kakasura means crow asura. Okay, Kakasura. Once it seems in Panchavati, when Lakshmana also was not around, he had gone to hunt or whatever, Rama is sleeping with his lap on Sita, with his head on Sita's lap. Rama has gone to sleep. A crow finds Sita to be a good meat to eat, to peck. Okay? So that crow actually is a demon, Kakasura. Some of them call him as Jayanta. In some versions he is called as Indra's son himself. But it's taken a form of a crow. He comes and pecks on the shoulder. Okay? She tries to shoo him away. He's not going. She doesn't want to wake up Rama because he's having a peaceful sleep. But that once he pecks, that blood flows and falls on Rama. Rama gets up. Okay? Now Rama gets up and finds that this crow is tormenting. There is no bow and arrow by his side. There is a blade of grass. He picks that blade of grass and he utters a mantra called Aishika Astra. Okay? And Aishika Astra means a mantra which can turn anything into a weapon. Even a blade of grass can become a weapon. Okay? So uses the Aishika Astra, then makes it into a Brahmastra and then leaves it on the crow. Now that Brahmastra is chasing the crow. And the crow is now growing to all the three worlds. He goes first to his father Indra. He says, Indra, please help me. He says, no, you have antagonized Rama. And for me, my throne is more important even than my wife and son. So you please go away. Goes to Brahma. Brahma says, no, I cannot help you. Goes to Vishnu, I cannot help you. Goes to Shiva, I can't help you. They say you go and fall at the feet of Rama himself. He is the only person who can save you. That crow comes back. He comes back and then falls at Rama's feet. By mistake, what it does, I'm just getting into a few details to understand what Sharanagati is. He keeps his feet on Rama and keeps his head. Sita immediately changes it. She removes the feet, keeps only the head on Rama's feet, and says, please pardon him. Because at Sita's insistence, Rama pardons him, but because the astra has been left, it can't be called, it can be called back, but because it has come out from Rama's bow, it has to hit a target. He says, I will pluck out one eye from you. Now, hence, if you see crows, it's not that they have only one eye, biologically they have two eyes, but if you see, they can only see with one eye. When they see with one eye, the other side becomes white in color. Okay, so if you watch crows carefully, the other eye will become white. So if the ball comes to this side, this part becomes white. Okay, that because this is the story behind that. He plucks off one eye for that crow. This story she tells to Hanuman. So now exchange of notes. Hanuman is sure that he's met Sita. Sita is sure that she has met Hanuman. The information that Rama is in search, he is in sorrow, and we are going to know come very soon to relieve you has been communicated to Sita. This whole scene happens to be the most beautiful scene in Ramayana, where Hanuman meets and ensures that the 10.5 months of misery that Sita was going through has been relieved. Now the story forward, we will take it up in the next week, and try and complete. I thought I'll complete Sundarakand in this week itself, but it's a huge story. I wanted to spend this particular part in detail so that we can enjoy the meeting between Hanuman and Sita. The part next is where he meets Ravana, he burns Lanka, then he goes back, is something that we will enjoy in the next week and try and end Sundarakand in the next week. If okay, we will quickly move on to Hanuman Chalisa and close the session. I'm so sorry, I have already taken 1.5 hours today. We'll start with Hanuman Chalisa. Yeah, thanks. Shri Guru Charana Saroj Raja Nijamana Mukura Sudhari Varanau Raghuvar Bimala Jasu Dayaku Phalachari Buddhihina Tanu Janike Sumiro Pavana Kumara Bala Buddhi Vidya Dehu Mohe क्लेश विकार जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीस तिहु लोक उजागर रामदूत अतुलित बल धाम अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नाम वीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी चनवरन विराज सुबेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगबंदन
विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज
करिबे को वातुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज सवारे लाए सजीवन लखन जियाए श्री रघुवीर हर्षि उर लाए रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बढ़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरत ही सम भाई सहस बदन तुम रो यश गावे अस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीसा नारद सारद सहित अहिसा जम कुबेर दिक्पाल जहाते कवि कोविद कहि सके कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीव ही कीना राम मिलाए राजपद दीना तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना युग सहस्र योजन पर भानु लील्यो ताहि मधुर फल जानु प्रभु मुद्रिका मेलि मुख माही जलधि लांग गए अचरज नाहि दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते सुगम अनुग्रह तुमरे तेते राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे होत न आज्ञा बिनु पैसारे सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी सरना तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना आपन तेज सम्हारो आपै तीनों लोक हांकते कापे भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे महावीर जब नाम सुनावे नासे रोग हरै सब पीड़ा जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा
संकट ते हनुमान
छुड़ावे मन क्रम वचन ध्यान जो लावे सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे चारों जुग परताप तुम्हारा
है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा
साधु संत के तुम रखवारे असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता असवर दीन जानकी माता राम रसायन तुम्हारे पासा सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा तुम्हारे भजन राम को पावे जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे अंत काल रघुवरपुर जाई जहाँ जन्म हरि भक्त कहाई और देवता चित्तन धरही हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई संकट कटै मिटै सब पीड़ा जो सुमिरै हनुमत बलबीरा जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई जो शत बार पाठ करे कोई छूट ही बंदी महासुख होई जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा होए सिद्धि साखी गौरी सा तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा कीजे नाथ हृदय मह डेरा पवन तनय संकट हरन मंगल मूर्ति रूप राम लखन सीता सहित हृदय बसहु सुर भूप सियावर रामचंद्र की
जय
के बोलो हनुमान की
जय
धन्यवाद। थैंक